Spawnable is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color. Every week, we talk news, what we've been playing, and tell you who's invited to the cookout. Our show is all about talking about gaming through a prism of blackness, because we are the culture. Welcome to Bricaco, y'all.
Yo, what the deal be, everybody? What's good, everybody? We have a lot of good stuff to talk about this week on the Spawn on Me podcast with Khalif Adams. I'm your host, Khalif Adams. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a wonderful rest of your week. I am back on the grind. It has been a minute since I have been here doing this kind of work on the streaming side of things. We have a couple of things going on. We have some stuff that's happening in the back end, testing out some new equipment, testing out some new things. Things have been a little bit glitchy. So I want to get that out in the world early to be like, hey, we're trying to get everything working properly and making sure everything is looking good for all of you at home. So I just want to make sure all of that is in the mix. So if you do see something kind of glitchy or something that kind of freaks out a little bit, I'll work on that stuff. We'll figure out good ways to make it happen for all of you at home. That being said, I want to give everyone a big shout out for all the love we've been getting on our social media and on the places that we do reside in the podcasting space, the content creation space. We've been getting some really good, some really awesome feedback, really awesome comments, really awesome just conversation around the work that I've been doing over the past couple of weeks with multiple reviews that have gone out. We did our Battlefield review, Battlefield 6 review, did our Ninja Gaiden 4 review. A lot of stuff is in the mix right now. We shared some really dope content about the latest season as well that just popped up. Really good stuff all in the mix, all over the place for various games and various things out in the world. So it's been very cool to be able to see, just the love that we've been getting for the work that we've been doing and trying to make some fun stuff happen with the conversations that we have been discussing and having. So that's always great. That's always fantastic. Always super fun to be able to do that. So that's always really good. And just great to be able to be rocking with y'all here on a Sunday. Making it happen, trying to get some good stuff in before all that stuff happens. So without further ado, we're going to just jump right into the news of the week. And a lot of it is all about our friends over at Xbox. First up on the show, there's been some discussions about what is happening over at Microsoft. Microsoft had a bunch of different stories during this week. They had a whole bunch of kind of, connected tissue happening across their channels and in various places in various ways. I think the biggest story that has come out of this week has been from our friends over at Bloomberg, coming from the fam Jason Schreier and Dina Bass, who put out a story talking about how Microsoft is now kind of pushing Xbox to heighten their profit margins for their business, for their BU. And that's really interesting news because that changes a lot of what it means for the Xbox product. Changes a lot for the potential work that goes into what's happening for all of you at home as consumers. It changes a ton of the work that's happening in multiple spaces, and it winds up making all of those things have a lot of different repercussions across the board. I think one of the things that people have been discussing and trying to figure out has been, what does this mean for, the future of Xbox? It's had a lot of good discussion about where we are in the ecosystem. I think we're now seeing, after the re-up of more hardware in the Xbox ROG Ally X, as kind of the first foray into to potential handheld space. And what does that mean for the next generation console that's coming? I think there's a lot of things to work into that discussion that I think mean a ton for what we're going to see moving forward. And I think what came across in that Bloomberg article was, at least the main talking points or the main kind of points of that discussion were, so what is a 30% hike in the want from the company to see as a profit actually mean, right? How badly does this move the needle for developers and for their expectations, which I think have already been high from the consumer end of it. I think consumers are always looking for the best and the best product that they can potentially buy. While we've also seen Microsoft raise prices on Game Pass, on hardware, on other aspects of the business, while also Microsoft making a pretty big amount of money and a pretty big profit across the board, while also asking to kind of raise this number after we saw the ABK acquisition. I think for me, as a person who's looking at this and knowing that at least from what was reported in the Bloomberg article, that the usual numbers were like 17 to 22%, which are, the current estimates for what you would need from a profit margin from their side. At least that's kind of the current industry standard. What's going to happen now in terms of what the future looks like for the brand, which I think has already had some issues, or at least has had some trouble kind of making the case for why people want to be in the Xbox brand. I think that's at least what a lot of consumers are saying. I think there's still a fair amount of good within that space. But also, what does this mean in terms of what does this look like if you are now asking people to spend in an economy that has been ruined by, at least here in the United States, by the Trump administration, right? So you have the Trump administration who's come in and are putting tariffs on everything, which I think is the main reason why we've seen this happen. And I want people to kind of remember that it is not just because of the idea of what corporate greed is. I think people will find that in a lot of different avenues. I think corporations are going to continue to do what corporations do. And Xbox is a business unit within that larger corporation. But I think if you're playing the game and looking at the game in the realist ways, like, I don't think a lot of these changes would have happened if the Trump administration hadn't literally screwed up so many aspects of the way things work. So with that being said, what does this mean for hardware? We now have seen a couple of companies, some companies like Apple, Nvidia. They've talked about kind of moving more of their offshore production to more domestic spaces to offset some of that potential cost. We've seen this big merger happen over the past couple of years, and to a certain extent, it hasn't necessarily paid off in terms of the amount of profit that particular BU has been trying to incur. We've seen Amy Hood come in, at least from the article, again, that this was a new rule kind of implemented in 2023 that is now starting to kind of really be shared from, folks in the article who identified, who said they wanted to be anonymous in the documentation, or at least in the story. And we've seen cancellations of studios. We've seen a lot of firings. We've seen a lot of disinformation, or I should say, not necessarily clear information coming from the Xbox camp in some aspects, while also now seeing, and we'll talk about this in the next story, multiple games that were in the Xbox fold now go over to the rival in PlayStation. Me as a person who has been in this game for a minute and is more even keeled than I think most, I hate the layoffs. I hate the closures of studios. I hate that projects have gotten canceled. Those are not great. Those are not fun stories to talk about. Those are not good things that have happened within the ecosystem for a long time. I do think that there is some aspect of this that, I think the biggest gripe that people have when it comes to this conversation is, it feels like the goalposts keep moving. And I think the thing I keep coming back to in all of these things is I love and I appreciate context. And I think all of these things outside of the profit margin, which now is, again, this is a self-inflicted wound, right? If you look at it that way, they didn't have to make that acquisition. They didn't have to buy those folks. I was definitely on board with them doing it at first, because the conversation was at that time and before that time, through the conversations that Phil Spencer shared in the FTC testimony and all those things, was, if we are trying to stay solvent and we are trying to stay in the race at all, because we've been taking a loss on hardware forever, we need to shake it up and we need to do something to kind of bring that in on the fold. Maybe the software side of it is going to be the way that we do that, with an acquisition of multiple studios, and the biggest studio probably on the planet at that time, which was Activision with Call of Duty and, all of their mobile properties, King, all that stuff. I think now there's a layer of buyer's remorse from all sides, but also I think at the end of the day, as a corporation and as a business, Microsoft is going to be like, yo, we spent a lot of money in your BU. Like, I think a lot of people also who I see online have these discussions often who might necessarily have worked in corporate and don't understand that, like, even if you have a really big margin, and even if you're pulling in crazy profits, in tech companies especially, if your BU is underperforming, everyone kind of looks at that BU and is like, well, how do we tune this to kind of get everything in line for our shareholders so that we can have a better prospectus and have a better conversation towards the end of the year about what is that supposed to look like for us. And I think you then wind up having these things happen where through consolidation, you wind up having things that usually happen in a consolidation. People lose jobs, projects get cut, all of that stuff. None of those things, again, they're not good things. But I feel like this is not new. And I don't think that this is not like common par for the course for these activations and for these kinds of things. While also having, some form of a roadmap for what the next version of this company is going to look like. I think we've had some good discussions about hardware. I think the ROG Ally X is a great piece of hardware. I think that was a really smart deal that they partnered up with Asus to be able to put out that device. I think it's not a device for everybody. It's a device for enthusiasts at $1,000. We talked about that in the review that we did on our YouTube channel. But I think I'm always trying to balance out what's the energy of the internet, which isn't really a good space to really think about the energy of anything, because it's always mad and it's always a little bit wrong and it's always in its feels in ways that are unnecessary and also not helpful to getting out real good nuanced conversations into these discussions. But I think this does put a lot of pressure on all of the games that we wind up seeing moving forward. I guess the big conversation has been Xbox doesn't have any exclusives to kind of show, and we've gotten around some of that part of the corner where I think there are some really good games coming out of the Xbox camp, and this year has been fantastic in and of itself. But I think looking through that Bloomberg article, one of the big discussion points that I think was the most salient and kind of most important one was, and this is a quote from the article, not every project is expected to hit the 30% profit threshold, said the people. Again, these are the anonymous folks who gave information up. Not every project is expected to hit 30% profit threshold, said the people, but many Xbox developers and groups have been presented with this new target. Moving forward, games that are either cheap to make or deemed more likely to generate significant revenue windfalls may take priority over riskier bets, said the people, while Xbox's floundering hardware division may face a significant rethinking. I think this is the most significant part of the article, because this part actually isn't new. I think the profit margin is one aspect of it for Xbox as a whole. But I think, and this leads to some other quotes that came out this week from both Sarah Bond and from Matt Booty, really do speak to the current state of the industry more than anything else, where we've seen this discussion pop itself up in multiple ways about like what happens if, and again, this is me coming off of games like Concord and other games that didn't necessarily do well at all, or games that didn't hit their potential own profit margins or their own sales expectations. And I think it is a overarching discussion that winds up happening in totality within that piece. That then bookends with Sarah Bond talking about in a interview with the friends over at Mashable these quotes.
Gaming accessible. That's definitely something I've heard you say in other interviews as well. I know this starts at $1,000. I know we've recently seen some price increases with Xbox Game Pass, some increases on devices and consoles, and I mean that's got to cut into accessibility a little bit. How do you think about that as president of Xbox, like in terms of making games accessible?
Yeah, there is a lot going on, but at Xbox, what we're focused on is how do we create options for everybody? So with this device, we have two devices. We have the Ally X. It's for a premium experience for the most demanding player. It has all the latest innovation in it. We also have the Xbox Ally. If you're a more casual enthusiast who wants to jump in, or you're looking for something cool to buy your kid to put under the tree, this Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's all about having choice and option for players in a time when there's a lot going on and there's a lot of different things that people want.
Interesting. Yeah, the rumors are that the next gen console will be almost more like a gaming PC in a lot of ways. That it'll be super high powered. I don't know if you can speak to that at all, but I mean, that would be helpful for me because there's a lot of like PC games I'd love to play, but like I said, getting the barrier of entry seems like it's really high. So if there was a console that could kind of be a gaming PC and console in one, like that would be helpful for me. I don't know what you can tell us about the next gen console. Any?
Well, I can tell you're right that the next gen console is going to be a very premium, very high end curated experience. You're starting to see some of the thinking that we have in this handheld, but I don't want to give it all away.
We're talking a lot about the hardware, devices, but when we think about those pivotal gaming moments, like I mentioned Halo, or I remember playing Myst, with my dad.
Yeah. Oh my God, Myst was good.
It was.
Now you're really hitting the nostalgia.
You're really extra dating
for it.
myself.
Yeah.
But we haven't really talked a lot about like games, and I know like exclusives have been less of a focus. It seems like with Xbox, we're getting more like cross-platform games. Where do like big blockbuster, exclusives fit into this, if at all, or is it kind of evolving past that place?
We're really seeing people evolve way past that. Like the biggest games in the world are available everywhere.
Yeah.
You look at Call of Duty, you look at Minecraft, you look at Fortnite, you look at Roblox. Like that's actually what's really driving community in gaming. That's where people gather, they have experiences. And the idea of locking it to one store or one device is antiquated for most people. You want to be...
I think that is a really important point that Sarah makes. And that was most recently echoed as well from Matt Booty, who shared a quote that I think has been going around a ton that he shared in the New York Times. He said, Microsoft leaders hope that bringing its premier franchises to new audiences will ultimately attract more customers into the Xbox ecosystem. Booty said, consumers no longer have a strong attachment to their actual devices they use to play games. Our biggest competition isn't another console, he said, adding that we are competing more and more with everything from TikTok to movies. I think this is the crux of where we see so much continued animus happen within the online space. And I think those two moments to me, not only hearing that Xbox again is not dead and is still making hardware, and it'll be potentially, and it sounds like a hybrid experience that we already are getting in the ROG Ally X. And she mentioned that in that Mashable interview, like this is kind of the forebearer of where we're going to go with our strategy. But everyone who I talk to in the industry, who is on the marketing side especially, the biggest concern isn't exclusives. It's about eyeballs and time. And I think the profit margin is one thing. I think that's going to change the way that we wind up seeing, again, that talked about the being less risky bets in the space. But I also think this is a moment where we have to also acknowledge that player behavior is driving most of this, and that player behavior isn't being driven specifically from the folks who are in my age bracket. You know what I mean? Like the Gen Alphas and the Gen Zs are the consumers that people like Xbox are building for. That's the reason why that this is an Xbox campaign, to me, made a ton of sense, and still makes a ton of sense to me, because they are not playing to us as much anymore. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a moment where I feel like there's this collective freak out by the community to say, we are being left out of this discussion and we are not being accounted for, even though we are the people who are spending right now. And I think that's the crux of this big argument, or the big kind of like, you know, everyone's clutching their pearls moment about Sarah and Matt saying these specific things, because it doesn't necessarily diminish the stature or the standard or the needs of those folks who I am a part of. But it is, as a business, you're constantly trying to figure out ways to evolve. You're constantly trying to figure out ways to make money. You're constantly trying to figure out ways to appease new audiences. And I think getting a chance to see multiple games move platform, and getting a chance to see a lot of that discussion change over the past couple of years doesn't feel like world ending to me. It feels like we all have to evolve the way that we think about this process, and we all have to evolve the way that we think about who we're sharing space with, because it feels a lot like the folks who I see who are the maddest online and the folks who are most upset are constantly talking about this version of Xbox that, to be fair, doesn't exist anymore. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. Again, I think if we are losing people are losing their jobs, and we're losing the ability to have fun experiences, that's a problem. If we're pricing everybody out of the ecosystem, that's a problem. If we're not really catering to a space that's going to give us some innovation, that's a problem. But to a certain extent, the things that are in that mix of we're seeing less risk in terms of game production and game thought and game idea isn't a new thing. If you think about the games that are on the top of the Circana list, I'm sorry for the people who don't believe in Circana, I have a quote for you. That's a whole other conversation I'm not going to get into, because that shit was hilarious. But that conversation hasn't changed. That has been a discussion point across the industry for a long time. That was prior to the ABK deal. That was prior to a lot of these discussion points that are happening around this specific publisher and this particular hardware manufacturer. Like, we've been talking about this since the discussions of free to play and all those other parts of it, right? The idea of like raising the price on games as an industry, moving to $70, moving past the uncanny valley, moving towards all of these things, are not new discussion points. These are all old discussion points that don't fix the creativity problem. Because at the end of the day, the same people who are mad, who are about like, I don't have exclusives, a lot of those same folks aren't buying those particular games either. So there's a balance here. Again, I think this is a symbiotic relationship, and I don't think people remember that. You can be as pro-consumer as you want. I am very pro-consumer. I want consumers to be smarter. I want consumers to make really good choices. I want consumers to have transparency. I want people to be able to understand what they're buying and what they're getting as much as they possibly can. Some of that can be offset by good messaging, and Microsoft has had a problem, and Xbox has had a problem over the years with good messaging. But that doesn't fix the problem of like, if you want more interesting things to exist, you have to buy those interesting products. And we've seen a lot of the games that I personally think have been the most innovative or been more interesting or more different and have given people really cool experiences. Those games don't sell as well. I think of games like Dreams from Media Molecule some years back. That game was one of the most innovative games of all time, and no one hardly bought it. I get it. It's a creation suite. And the games that you're finding your own fun through UGC in that game, and that's different. But there's been a ton of other games that have been in that space where, again, the numbers haven't proven out the idea that like, oh, this is going to be something that everyone wants and everyone's going to buy in, when everyone kind of buys the same thing over and over again, who are getting the same experiences all over again. And that's not even talking about Fortnite. That's not even talking about Roblox. That's not even talking about those spaces that are Gen Alpha, Gen Z kind of tailored in those ways. So those aren't even in the same space for that. So I think when we discuss all of these things and you do it in context and you do it in a way that you're looking at all of those pieces tied together, what Matt Booty said isn't wrong. And what Sarah Bond said isn't wrong. It's a lot of actually smart kind of observances within that part of the discussion to really make sure that that is like a thing of like, we're trying to figure out the ecosystem in a real way for where we're going and moving forward, for the future of what our company is going to wind up doing. I have to turn on my radio light upstairs. Anyway. So I think, circling back to this piece and what we're going through and what we're seeing right now. And again, I am not a person who is in the dev seat of having to buy a new dev kit, which supposedly those prices went up to. I am not right now, currently not in the marketing seat to be able to figure out what that is. But I am hearing through friends and cohorts and people who I know in the industry that like that is the biggest thing right now. That is the hardest thing to figure out is we hear all these things from the audience, but they're also not necessarily translating into sales. And what do we do to kind of bolster that in a way that makes sense that also doesn't feel weird or gross or feels like we're delving into using just AI stuff to be able to pull that in or faking numbers or any of that kind of stuff. It is a different strategy for them that is getting pulled down from on high from people who are not necessarily Phil Spencer, right? Although he is the face of it, and although I'm sure he had to sign off on some of that stuff, you have to sign off on some of those things. You were the president of Xbox during those times, and now Sarah Bond is. So those folks are having to make those decisions on behalf of the entire BU. But I think Amy Hood having these new numbers pulled into the space on the back of that, looking at from what a business is trying to do, those are hard. That's a hard number to hit. That's a difficult number to get to when so many of the aspects that are in the mix, tariffs, the current hardware space, lack of innovation across some games, again, vying for eyeballs and time with major players that are just soaking up so much of that time that you have as disposable time and disposable income. Again, Gen Z and Gen Alpha don't have the disposable income that my generation currently has, right? That's an honest thing. That's the way that capitalism kind of works currently, and it has for a while. I want that to be more equal. Again, I want everyone to be able to have as much disposable income as they want so that we can do some fun stuff and we would have, you don't have to think about your job all the time, but that's not the way this works yet. So I think it was really good. Again, great work from Schreier and Bass over at Bloomberg, kind of getting this story out into the world. I think it has raised a lot of different discussion points for folks. It has me actually really excited about what the next Xbox is going to be. I'm really liking the fact that the walled gardens are kind of coming down. I love the fact that I can get all of my experiences on one device in the ROG Ally X right now. I'm really enjoying that. I'm really liking the ideas of where we're kind of going with this. I love exclusives, but I also don't care. I just want to play the stuff where I can play the stuff. I am of the Gen Z, Gen Alpha phase, and I've been here for a long time. I'm also like not a physical game want person. That was a not real sentence. I don't really care about physical games in that way. I understand the reasons for it, but I'm also like a very digital person. I want all the things in the easiest routes that I can get to them, and I love seeing stuff move places. And that leads us to our next story, which is Halo is now on the PlayStation 5, which is wild as hell to say out loud. We knew it was going to happen. I think everybody who saw the writing on the wall knew that was going to be a thing. I think most people who were paying attention really knew that this was going to be in the mix at some point when we started seeing games move over. Linky B, I'll get to your comment in 1 second. But I think the understanding of, again, Microsoft and Xbox are like, yo, let's throw stuff in other places. We've seen it do well in various games already. We've already seen things move in these directions. Why not be able to do so? It just makes kind of sense to be able to do it. And I agree. I got a chance to check this out the day before the announcement. Checking out Halo Campaign Evolved was pretty dope. Like, it's really fun. It is a really fun experience. It is cool to be able to go back and see all those classic spaces, or at least the one that we were able to see, the cartographer level reimagined with all of these stunning, beautiful Unreal Engine graphics, the way the sky looks, the way the water looks, the way that all the assets look, all of this stuff. So it's like, all of these things are really, really dope to be able to see out in the world. And it's really great to be able to see all of these pieces come together. And of course, immediately after this thing gets announced during the Halo World Championships, everybody and their mama starts to complain about the smallest things that to me don't matter. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, all right. Oh, okay. So the Needler, you can see an ammo counter on it. Oh, I saw original devs who worked on the game like mad at the new version of it, and I'm just like this is cool stuff, man. Like, why are we complaining about all of these things all the time when, to a certain extent, like, this is what remakes are for. They're not going to be one-to-one interpretations or connections to what that was. One of my favorite remakes was the Dead Space 2 remake, and they changed an entire major aspect of that game, and it was even better because of it. There were some, I do want to go into a couple of the points that were in there, because I think that those are important, because I think those actually do give you some really fun stuff to poke at. And I think, if those are going to be the pieces that come through when you're playing this new version of an old game, all of those things are going to be great. Completely rebuilt campaign, new pathfinding, new wayfinding ways to kind of move through the game, which are great. I saw people mad about this one section in the demo where there's this corridor where the pacing, if you're playing it in the old version, is much slower, and now you can sprint and run through it, and people were crying about that. I was like, all right, y'all, like, come on. Overhauled cinematics and audio, which is great. The weapons have changed a bit. You still get the 9 classic weapons, but some of those now you can aim down sights with. You can do a lot of different things there. The thing I'm most excited about are the addition of new skulls in the game. Again, those combat modifiers. They said in the vid doc that went along with it, they have the most now that they've had in the game, which I think is going to be really fun. I think that adds so much replayability to this game in big ways. You can now drive and hijack some of the vehicles, the enemy vehicles, that you weren't able to do in the original game. But the thing that really is hype is, like, you get 3 new prequel missions where you can join Master Chief and Sergeant Johnson in a brand new arc before the events of Halo Combat Evolved, with new environments, gameplay characters, and enemies and stuff. This is dope. Why are we complaining about everything? Everything on the internet is fodder for complaint. Everything on the internet, when you get cool stuff, people still don't like the cool stuff. And I'm like, this is why we get the same kinds of games that we continue to get, and you have the same experiences, and you have the same things that we just talked about in the previous story, which again is, people aren't going to want to try to innovate. They're just going to try to make as much money as possible. And that's not necessarily great. That's not helpful. That doesn't do anything for most people. There isn't a lot that you can pull into that besides, like, all right, dope. So We are trying to make something different. We're trying to add something new. We're trying to bring a new wrinkle to a classic. And now because the thing has a ammo counter on it and people are complaining about it, what's the purpose of us trying to go through and trying to fix that stuff? Like, okay. Like, I don't understand people vying for less cool shit. Like, that part has always been a really weird thing to me. And I'm like, all right, so we're just going to continue to ask for the same old stuff that we keep complaining about while also poo-pooing on any new stuff that winds up getting made. You can't really have it both ways. This conversation about the modern game design and the all that stuff that gets also funneled into all the weirdos with the conversation around wokeness and anti this and blah blah blah. Like, I want this to continue to be fun. There's a reason why you haven't seen a lot of me streaming this stuff. Also, it's like I'm not streaming as much. I'm not doing the show as often. I'm really trying to pick my spots about things that make sense and are fun, because the internet is just ruining all of it, and it's boring. The conversations are boring. The people who are having the discussions are boring. Everyone's complaining about the same thing over and over again. This shit is boring. And it's not fun. Like, I want this to continue to be dope. I want this to continue to be fun. And people are just like ruining and dragging all the good out of all these spaces. And I can tell you, it's not just me. It's a lot of developers who are tired too. And there's a lot of people who are making the argument of like, put the fries in the bag and all the other stuff and all that things. And I'm like, yeah, you're gonna put the fries in the bag, and then the people who are gonna make the stuff are gonna dip out and do other stuff. That's not good. You're gonna tell all the people who know what they're doing to leave, and then you're gonna make AI games and give it to Elon. That's stupid. Doesn't make any sense. Thirsty Panda in the chat says we can't enjoy shit. Yeah. Like, I have a discerning level of taste. I'm a huge critic of many of the things that I consume. But I also understand that, one, not everything is for me, and two, that everything has an audience if you just let people rock. And it made me more excited to go check this out because I got a chance to play the demo. I got a chance to experience it, and it's fun. It's really fun. If you love Halo, this is going to be cool. I'm really excited about seeing them play in this space with this kind of technology. And then what does this mean for the next Halo game? That's where my brain went initially, was to be like, oh, this is dope. Like, oh, if they're doing this in this engine and it looks and feels like this, I can't wait to see what they're working on for the next iteration of Halo in the series. And that Halo series, whatever the next version of it is going to wind up being, as they talked about during the Halo World Series, the Championship Series event this weekend, is going to PlayStation 5. Everything moving forward from Halo Studios is going to be on both platforms. That's great. That's great for everybody. That's awesome. The people who are still mad about games moving into multiple platforms, you need Jesus. Or something to do. You need something to do that's outside of games, because this is not a big problem. I still, to this day, have not heard a good argument from anyone about why these games moving to multiple platforms is bad. It's not bad for the people who have the platform to begin with, and it's not bad for the people who are on the platform who are getting the new thing. There's no loss here. This is a no-lose situation for anyone, and we are like starving to find ways to lose. We're like we're loving the loss for no reason at all. It makes no sense at all to be able to have that part of the conversation in the mix. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I think it's dope. This is going to be coming out next year. I believe it's next year. If I didn't mess that up, yeah, it's coming out 2026 to Xbox Series X, S, PC, Steam, PlayStation. Supports cloud gaming, Xbox Play Anywhere, and arrives on day one with Game Pass Ultimate and PC stuff. That's great. Everyone gets to play that joint. Go play the oldest version of Halo in a new way, or this version of Halo in a new way. That's fantastic. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to read some of the chats off in chat. And then we're going to play a quick commercial. And then I'll play a quick ad. And then we'll be back with the second half of the show where I'm going to talk to you about 2 really dope controllers that I've been testing out. And I think you should definitely have an eye out for them. So let me take a quick break. And then we'll be right back after this.
What if you could transform your body, level up your mind, and unleash your warrior spirit all by playing a role-playing game? Well, now you can with Infinite, the world's first science-backed fitness fantasy RPG where real-world progress becomes your power. Create your avatar based on your goals and level, then explore game modes like the Dungeon, Academy, and Sanctum using powerful tools and apps to forge real transformation. You ready to combine fitness and gaming to unlock your ultimate potential? Then visit fitnessfantasyrpg.com and use the code SpawnOnMe for 10% off your custom plan. Play Infinite and become the hero of your own fitness story.
Hey there, my name is Naomi, and you might know me from internet things like hosting for IGN. I'd like to introduce you to my new show, This Week in Gaming. It's 20 minutes, short and sweet, and every week I go through all the important gaming news that you need to know, and then we have folks on like Khalif Adams, who shows up quite often, talk about all the important news. And you get to listen to it wherever you get your podcast, so it's easy to find. Just look for This Week in Gaming and make sure to give it a follow. And every week, Monday at 9 p.m. Pacific time, you get a brand new episode. I hope you'll join me.
So, what have I been playing for the past couple of weeks? I have been doing lots of things over the past couple of weeks, but mostly I've been playing games for review. My review for The Outer Worlds 2 is still pending. I'm still working through it. It is a fantastic game. It is beautiful. It is stunning. I am just trying to continue to find some times to play it because I have multiple things I'm trying to do while job hunting, while doing all that stuff. So I'm probably like maybe 20 hours in, I think. I'm playing it slow. The problem with games for review like this is if you're doing multiple reviews. Now, mind you, I've reviewed Battlefield. I've reviewed the Xbox Series X, Xbox ROG Ally X, Ninja Gaiden for and like 2 other games. As a solo person doing this, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of hours trying to get those things done and reviewed and edited and made pretty and all that stuff. So I apologize to our friends over at Obsidian for not getting the review out for Embargo, but I do love the fact that people are still doing reviews, rolling reviews. You know, that actually gives us more time to do that. Shout out to IGN for doing that. Reviews in progress were actually a brilliant thing that kind of evolved from the multiplayer space and things not being necessarily fully there. But it's been really dope to be able to have that in the mix and be able to feel not super pressured. Like, they're wonderful. I love working with my friends over at Xbox and all those folks who gave us code for a lot of the games that we've been reviewing, because they're really sweet about, like, if you hit embargo, that's great, you know, but we're still, you know, still in the mix for some of that stuff. That being said, I have been reviewing 2 controllers in the space, and it's been so good. Like, I think I might have found, like, I'm a big Xbox Elite controller fan, but I have to say I might have found my new favorite controller for the Xbox for my time playing with Xbox. The Scuf Valor. I want to make sure I'm getting all the names right, because I got to get it right. Got to make sure you're getting it right. So the Scuf Valor Pro Wireless is this new controller from our friends over at Scuf. It has a lot of the same, you know, the button layout is, of course, the Xbox button layout, the way you would expect it to be. But what makes this really, really good is there's an interesting kind of coding here that I think you really have to touch it to really understand how good this feels in your hand. Now, first of all, the weight feels really good. The weight is like really fantastic in terms of like how heavy this thing feels. You know, what are the pieces that feel the best? Like the grips on the back, you can kind of see them here. I'm going to spin this around and hopefully the camera will catch it. These grips are really good. The back buttons that have always been a little bit of a problematic thing for me on Elite controllers because they stick out too far. The way that these work is you have 2 buttons here. You have like paddles here. Oops, try to get this to focus right. Paddles here and your back paddle here. So like when you're touching these, it feels really, really just easy to get and hit those. You can play this on both Xbox and PC, and via Bluetooth. There's a dongle that goes along with it that you use to put, to connect it to the controller. It has the kind of trigger stops that are here. This is customizable. Like you can swap out this plate and get a really nice, a different plate for it. They had a couple different colors. They had this really dope orange one. The sticks on this, there's a grip here on these sticks. I'm going to see if I can get it to focus. The grip on these sticks are some of the best grips I've ever touched. Like these feel so good when you're playing with them. The button throw is good. You have, you can potentially see it on top. You see those 3 kind of notches on top. Those are the indicators for what you're connected to. So it'll be a different color based on if you're playing with the Bluetooth or if you're playing with the Xbox or if you're playing with something else. You're playing with, on PC. So you can connect it via USB-C. You can connect it via the dongle. And there's some features here that I do want to talk about because they're really, really good. Again, the customizable rear paddles. 2.4. I believe it's 2.4 as well in terms of the transfer rate, but it says ultra fast connectivity. You can get, when you're activated on PC, 1K hertz polling rate for lightning fast inputs, which is really good because the faster your inputs go, that means that the faster the connection between the controller and the PC and what you see on screen. In terms of button to photon is what we used to call it when I worked at Intel, is very, very fast. The instant adjustable triggers from mouse click speed to fast FPS shots. I'm just reading through the spec sheet because I think it gives me the best version of telling you the information. I love the fact that you can flip that switch and it's basically a 1-button switch. You get like the full throw of it if you put it all the way down, so it's a full throw. And if you click it, you see how far that doesn't move. So that means that when you're pulling in for shots, like I use this for Battlefield a lot. So when you're pulling in, I'm not pulling a full trigger pull to get a shot off or to aim down sights, especially when I use this to snipe. It feels even better because I'm not having to hold down fully to do the aim down sight, and it's a faster aim down sight when I'm using certain weapons, so that's great. TMR thumbsticks, which seem to be the rave right now. We're going to see that on the other controller I'm going to talk about in a second as well. The hardest part about the controllers that I've seen so far across the board that don't have TMR sticks is that they wear down pretty easily. These are interchangeable. There are a couple of different versions, a higher one and a shorter one as well. And the fact, again, 17 hours on a charge is great. You get a 6-foot USB cable to be able to connect it. It also has, what I really like is if you've had a headset that has the ability to kind of like switch between audio sources, you can do that here with these little rockers that are here on the controller. So you plug in your headset into it, your 3.5 into it, and you can balance your game and chat with those little rollers on the controller, which is nice because it then changes you not having to do that on a headset or having to move that in another direction. You can literally just roll up and down and get your chat balance in some of those spaces there, which I think is really, really good. The price for this bad boy is let me triple check and make me it is, let me see if I can find it, because I do want you to know what the MSRP is for it. Let me just go on their website and go look, because I forgot. I remember having the number here in my brain, but I forgot what it was. But so far, it is my favorite controller for multiple reasons, because I think it just does a lot of stuff that I really like for my play style. It's $189. So currently it's $189 for this version of it. This is the wireless version of it. The wired version is $109, I believe. But the wireless version looks to be $189 on the website, which again is pricey. It's pricey, but it is very, very good. It has been my favorite Xbox controller of late for a while. I think what makes it, again, special is, for me, I'm always worried about ergonomics. Ergonomics for me is always going to be a problematic thing. I'm trying to make sure that my hands don't hurt when I play, and I'm also trying to make sure that I'm really digging into, you know, being able to play for as long as I want, and being able to not feel like it's hurting my hands in a lot of different ways. So that to me is the most important part. If you can always find stuff like that, then it's great, because then you just don't have that extra layer of worry. Again, that's the reason why I'm really digging on the Xbox ROG Ally X, is because it does have that moment where you're like, oh, I can play this for as long as I want and my hands don't hurt. That's pretty great. That's awesome. The other controller that I have been playing, and this one is for my PlayStation fans, is the Razer Raiju V3 Pro. This is an Xbox controller. I'm sorry, a PlayStation controller. But what is great about it is that you can play this as well on both PC, and you can play this both wired and on your PlayStation 5 or your PlayStation Pro. What I really like about this controller is, again, grips feel really good on the front and on the sides here. Like, these feel fantastic. These sticks are a little bit looser, but they also feel premium in the ways that they feel. Of course, they have the dope kind of Razer logo here that I need to focus on and stuff. But what makes this controller cool too is that it also has the swappable buttons here for the back. But the thing that makes this controller even doper and even cooler is these buttons. So if you play games in the claw formation, these two buttons here can be programmed within the Razer software to be whatever you want. So instead of even having buttons that you would use for paddles for things that I swap things to, like grenade throws and things like that, you can put those on these bumper buttons up here. It's like an extra bumper button, which I really like. It changes the way I play for multiple games too. I put this for sports games as, like, if I'm playing 2K, I put that as my timeout button. I put that as a replay button. I put that as other stuff that I do for other things. It feels really good. And the thing that's crazy about it is it's really light. Like, it is one of the lightest controllers I've had in a long time. At first, it throws you off because you're like, oh, this feels way too light. But in reality, again, if you're talking about ergonomics and talking about ways that feel good in the hand, this thing feels really, really good. It has 4 removable mouse click back buttons that you can pull off. Those 2 claw bumper buttons. Of course, the symmetrical PlayStation format. Those are also TMR thumbsticks with swappable caps, so you can get the height variation there. The Razer Pro triggers, it also has trigger stops on this as well. So if you wanna again change the trigger throw, you can. So this is all the way down so that it's the closest trigger stop. And if you swap it, you get the full stop, which goes down even further. The D-pad has an 8-way floating D-pad, which I think is actually really good too. So the D-pad usually is sunken into the controller. I'm gonna try to see if I can get you that. This is a floating D-pad, so it gives you even more throw and more space to kind of play around with it. So it feels a little bit less kind of sunken into the controller, which if you're playing fighting games are always a little bit hard to kind of deal with. They're not usually that great. On a controller, playing with that kind of a D-pad, that gives you a lot more versatility on it. And then you, again, like a lot of the stuff that you would usually think of in a Razer product. What I like is that they didn't really heavily put a lot of RGB in this, which I think is kind of sweet. I like the fact that it's really clean in terms of its aesthetic. And you can, again, use like the Razer Synapse software for tuning every aspect of it, like changing the buttons around, changing the ways the sticks feel, all of those things. Not feel specifically of like you can make it stiffer or not on the actual controller, but you can actually change the way that the linear throw is for some of that stuff, for some of these things. And it's 2.4 wireless on that controller. I have been really happy with the controllers that have been coming out of late. There's been a lot of really good stuff that's been in the controller space for people who are looking for something different. The pricing, even though it's not out yet, is $219 for that controller. So that controller is expensive, but I think for most folks who are looking to purchase something high end, that is durable, that feels good, that is a piece of gear that you can use for multiple systems. If you are a person who's playing on console and you're playing on a PC, it's a good alternative controller to think about in the space. So lots of good stuff coming out in the world right now on the video game side of things. Lots of really good stuff in terms of the gaming space as a whole. I guess the games are good. The industry is hurting. That's the probably way that I would end the summary of what this episode is. But all of that to say, there's some really dope stuff out there to play right now. If you are hurting for games, you should not be hurting for games. I'm playing this. I'm playing Outer Worlds. I'm playing Ball X Pit, which is now my weird game obsession. Playing through some of my older catalog stuff on my ROG Ally X because I want to see how those feel. Also playing through a couple of games that I just started playing through for review. More review stuff. So there's a lot of games out right now. And we're coming up on award season, which is going to be a whole nother conversation, which is going to be really fun to see. In a year that has been jam-packed with dope stuff, there's going to be some dope stuff out here for people to be able to pick for the Game Awards and other shows like that. So thank you all for rocking. Again, I'm a little bit rusty. So thank you everybody for coming through. We have some technical difficulties, but you'll never know if you watched the version that goes out on the feeds. If you watch the live show, thank you for bearing with me. And thank you for coming through on a Sunday when you could be watching some football and things like that. So I'm going to go get the show edited, rock out, and then I'm going to go watch the Knicks play and see if we can get to 3-0. We have a really dope interview as well this week with the head of the ESA, Stanley Pierre-Louis. He came on to talk about the Power of Play report that they put out a couple of days ago that had people real mad on the internet because, God forbid, they say within their reporting that women and men play games about the same amount. Who knew that it was a thing in that space? Thirsty Panda also in the chat says Dispatch is really dope. It's if you like Telltale games, go check out Dispatch, which looks phenomenal and looks really, really dope. All right, everybody, have a good rest of your week. Have a wonderful weekend. Check out the shirt that we put out. You can look at if you're on Twitter still, go look at my pinned tweet. It speaks to some of the madness that went over during this weekend, with people getting their coats pulled about being grifters or not. So I made a shirt about it. Go check that out on my pinned tweet, and cop a shirt. They're pretty cheap. Go get one. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Peace, y'all. Later.